Welcome back to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Shepard from Fairview Park PD in Ohio. This is his 30th year in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Shepard. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a privilege.
Of course. I'm really excited to have this conversation because you have been a part of your regional peer support team since 2006. Which is a really long time. And I know you shared with me that you started off with 10 people in your peer support team, and now you have up to 50. And so I was hoping you could give us maybe a little bit of background into you, and then also how and why you got started in the peer support team back in 2006.
Sure, just a little bit about myself. Began my law enforcement career in 1988. I've done private security, corrections, got hired by my police department in 1996. It is through that I was put on a regional SWAT team as a hostage negotiator. And in 2006, we had an incident in a neighboring community where a young man shot at police officers, and the police officers had to return fire. And ultimately, the young man was killed in the exchange of gunfire. So from that, because we didn't really have peer support in this area per se, or a formal structure, our SWAT commander put negotiators with the officers who fired shots at the young man. When it was all said and done, we got through that incident, but we quickly realized that being a hostage negotiator does not prepare us to help a peer who had to take a life or use deadly force or even being shot at. So we decided to do some advanced training. So the Ohio Fraternal Order of Police had a program, and they brought an instructor up from Columbus. And in 2006, we sat down, we had a class, and we started again with 10 people. One of our team members, he hates it, I always remind him, he's still part of the group, said that we were 10 well-intended individuals, and we were. But through that, we gelled and became a very close-knit team. We incorporated as a nonprofit in 2008. And since then, we have grown exponentially to now we have around 50 members: police, fire, EMS, corrections, mental health, dispatch, family members. So we try to assist public safety in this area and throughout the state of Ohio. Wherever we're called, we respond. And it's been privileged. The reason that our team has been successful is because of the men and women on this group who work so hard to provide such a good service. A lot of our referral is by word of mouth. And what ends up happening is because our folks do such a good job, when an agency has an incident or a neighboring agency has an agency that we've helped has an incident, again, they call us or they refer us to neighboring agencies if something happens. So we started out our first year, we had one call for service. This year, we'll average around 30. So we're averaging around 30 calls for service. And obviously, it doesn't happen, once a month or twice a month. It usually, unfortunately, bad things happen in groups. We'll go months without anything, and then we'll go months where every week we get 2-3 calls for service. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you said that you've seen it grow and that it's word of mouth, which means that you've built trust, within your community, which is huge because we know that, the moment something isn't confidential or, that distrust happens, then everything crumbles. And so the fact that you've been so successful speaks volumes to the people you have in place, the confidentiality that you have in place, and the trust that you've built within the community around you. We know that, mental health historically, and I think that we're getting so much better now, but it was so stigmatized, that I'm sure maybe you can even relate to this, back when you started, you wouldn't even think about talking about some of this stuff. And it wasn't a part of the culture in the way that it is now. And so how have you seen that stigma start to dissolve over time and the receptiveness to these things start to build?
Well, first, I wanted to thank you for acknowledging confidentiality is the utmost. If our folks aren't able to keep secrets or to, ensure that whatever is told to us is kept in confidence, then the process doesn't work. So I'm going to give you a perfect example just at my own agency. Yeah. So we start this program and we decide that we're going to go to our home departments to present about our group. And I went to a senior lieutenant. At the time, he had 35 years on the job. And I do our PowerPoint talking about this. And he looks at me and goes, "Let me tell you something, kid. That's all touchy-feely BS. I'm going to tell you what they told me when I got on. You're going to suck it up and you're going to drive on because that's what you're going to do." And I looked at him and I said, "Lieutenant, I appreciate that. And with all due respect, I want you to come with me to every single one of these presentations." And he looked at me funny. He said, "Why?" And he was basically an open book about his private life, but he'd been divorced. He's a recovering alcoholic, had episodes of violence. And at the time, he worked very hard to reinvent himself. But my point to him was, if that program was around when he was a young officer, maybe he wouldn't have had to do that. And he looked at me, he shook my head. And from that point on, he was one of our biggest advocates because we all do it differently. And in his defense, older generations, you didn't want to show that you were weak. And people, it's tough because we are supposed to be the ones that go to people's problems and be that level power or force that makes sure that things are better. And if we show that we are weak, people in this profession sometimes were perceived as, well, they couldn't do the job right. And what we've come to know is that we're just human beings. I tell people that the badge on my chest is just a piece of metal, but it's what's underneath the badge that does it. So you're right. The stigma has changed. Wellness is a big thing because we realize officers now are staying longer than ever before. And if we work on our well-being, if we learn how to cope with different traumas, if we learn how to be, healthier and better, then in the long run, our profession's better and we have better officers.
Yeah. And the one thing that comes to mind always, and it feels counterproductive, right? Because I think that you guys, especially in law enforcement, are really, really good at taking care of other people, right? And like you said, like you are the people who come up and you're problem solvers and, you're peacekeepers and you come out and you try to make sure that you are servicing everybody else the best that you can, but then you forget to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And, we know that if you don't take care of yourself, there's no way that you can show up in the most effective, productive way for everybody else if you're not taking care of yourself. But so often, like you said, it's seen as weakness or, selfishness to take care of yourself. But you sometimes have to take those steps back a little bit in order to move forward in the best way possible. And, one of the reasons why I started this podcast in the first place is because I was having conversations like this one where it was like, man, I wish I would have known this earlier. Maybe if I would have done this earlier, maybe it would have saved my marriage, or, maybe my back wouldn't be so jacked up, or maybe this, that, the other thing. Like, I wish, and I think that the older generation is now starting to understand that, right? Maybe even if you were grown up in an area of like, suck it up, buttercup, I think that you can kind of take that step back and say, man, like maybe things would have been better or different, or maybe I would have been able to process that quicker or more effectively. Maybe I didn't feel like I had to go and turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol, like you said, with that individual kind of using that as a coping mechanism for the stress. Right. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like now that you see the program in its entirety and all the great work that you guys have done now since 2006, have you ever had that moment of like, man, this was something that would have been beneficial for me earlier in my career?
I think I was fortunate to come in on the cusp when wellness was starting to go. In defense of, you know, public safety hires, we bring in certain personalities, right? Type A, hard chargers, kick butt, take names later. And when we're young, we're going to live forever. We learn to compartmentalize. We don't like to, because we just roll on because we live on adrenaline. The older generations followed what their predecessors did and their coping mechanisms. And eventually, folks got to realize that the old coping mechanisms weren't working, that it was actually hurting us more. So now what we see now is there are being able to work out on duty, groups that if you are involved in something that come out and help you, organizations, different things that aren't EAP that are either offered through the union or other police organizations, where if you have financial issues or you have stress issues or you have things, that there's confidential numbers that you can call and get help. So I think the resources are there, and that's exciting. I also think that people have learned, and have those who have suffered and see that there's something that needs to be changed have spoken up. And fortunately, a lot of people are listening and things are moving in a positive direction.
I agree with you. And, I've only been in this wellness space for the last 8 years. And even in the last 8 years, I've seen a lot of forward movement when it comes to wellness, and even just having the conversations, which I think is step number one, is having the awareness around it. And then you can start to identify what those tools and resources are, what the actionary steps are to be able to support that. I know that you touched on this a little bit, but I was hoping we can dive a little bit deeper into maybe some of those coping mechanisms that you're seeing, or some of the behaviors that are symptoms to how trauma can affect someone if it goes without being addressed, so maybe people who are listening can start to identify those things within themselves, but then also within their peers and their organization.
Well, first I want to stress that everybody does it differently. You and I could experience the same event or trauma, and we would react differently based on our life situation, our training, our own experiences. So recognizing that one stop or one advice for one person, everybody's response has to be individualized to that officer or to that public safety person. So as soon as we realize, one, that when we do experience trauma, we have certain effects that happen to us. And once we also learn that the effects, that you educate that officer that, hey, what you're feeling is normal, right away, that sort of loosens things up so that, they realize, okay, I'm not going crazy. This isn't, because I've never felt this before. And when you see, these are normal things. And then we talk about coping mechanisms like, structure, working out, eating well, things like that, common sense stuff. The other thing is that I've experienced since doing this, is that whenever a critical incident stress team goes out to somebody, all we really are facilitators. The people that really do the heavy lifting are the peers themselves, are the people that are involved. And a lot of times what we find is if we have a multidiscipline thing, or even if two officers have the same event happen and they talk to each other, they help each other instantly. Because a lot of times, as much as we like to be, we're the king of the world, we're it. When bad things happen, whether it was in our control or not in our control, we always have doubt. I could have done this better. I should have done this better. I would have done this better. And when you have the affirmation from a peer or someone who is with you that you did everything that you were supposed to do, that helps you. It helps your own self doubt. The other thing is that when you go through this thing, and if you work hard and you handle things on the lowest level, instead of waiting until it's a big thing, if you handle it in little increments, it's easier to deal with the trauma, as opposed to, every trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma, and you're not addressing it. And then all of a sudden things just go off the rails. So what we try to stress is address each event as it happens, address the symptoms of those, work through those things, find whatever coping mechanism works for you, and then get it into a program. So then the next event, you're not dealing with that past event, you're just dealing with each individual event. Now, make no mistake, there will be events in a career that far exceed any cumulative set of events. But if you are able to deal with each individual thing as it happens, it helps you go through, as opposed to just packing away until you can no longer deal with everything that you packed away in your career.
Well, I appreciate that you said that everybody's different. And I agree with you that proactive offloading is always best case scenario, but it's not always what we do. Right. And I have firsthand experience with that. Like, I shoved everything down throughout my life until I couldn't anymore. And I know what that feels like to, reach this like breaking point and feel so out of control and so like powerless over all of these things. And I know that when we shove things down, it's because they're scary or they're hard to process. And we don't want to do that, right? Like, we want to take the path of least resistance always. And so what's the path of least resistance? That's shoving it down. It's drinking it away. It's ignoring it. Those are the easy ways out rather than like proactively processing. And so I have learned over time the value in that, of like, the only way out is through. How can we address this as it comes, even though it's hard? It's not easy. And I know we talk about it like sometimes like it's easy, but there's hard work and effort that goes into that. But I also like some of the things that you said about how we tend to isolate ourselves, in the sense that, like, I think that if we were to objectively have this conversation, and we were to ask a room of people, do you think, we can talk, in your space in law enforcement, do you think you are the only person who has ever dealt with something like this before? And objectively, you could be like, no, of course not. Like, there's, maybe not the exact same thing, but there are a lot of people who have gone through similar things. But our brain doesn't work that way when it's like, when we're alone, right? We're like, we're crazy. No one else feels this way. It's not impacting anyone except for me. And so I like that you said, like, how can you find people that you can communicate with, that you can relate to? And then how can you create a process for yourself for offloading those things proactively in a healthy way? Because there are healthy coping mechanisms and there are unhealthy coping mechanisms. And you mentioned some of the healthy ones, right? You said exercise, communication, sharing with people. We know that having a positive outlet, like a hobby that, helps you to get through these things. Like, there are a lot of different things that we can do to help with that. And I think that as soon as you can have that mindset of proactiveness, and it makes those like actionable things a little bit easier, because it's almost like you trained for it, you prepared for it, you're ready for it, instead of being like, I don't know what to do. It's like, okay, I know what to do. I know what my system is and how I can process this thing.
Sure. Just circling back, I have no doubt that when we're done with this, you're going to go back and you're going to edit this, and you're going to think, boy, why did I ask that question that way? Because that's what we are as humans, right? We are our own worst critics. And when you are in an event that is life or death or injury or something serious, and things don't turn out exactly positively, you always look in yourself and say, boy, I should have done something different. I would have changed it. But what I would tell you this is, and you brought up a good point about hobbies. I'm a big proponent of, some days you can be Officer Smith or Officer Jones, but ultimately you were somebody before you were Officer Smith or Officer Jones, and you'll be someone after you're Officer Smith and after Officer Jones.
Yeah.
So big thing is find hobbies. Whenever we have someone that's involved in a big incident, I talk about the one county rule. I suggest that they go someplace where nobody knows that they're officers or firefighters or dispatchers or corrections. They go somewhere where they're just a citizen and they can blend in and they can take a deep breath and they can do that. Because sometimes we have to separate that identity of being a police officer or a firefighter for, a father, a husband, a friend. So it's important that separation, but not to get lost in your career or let that event do it, but give yourself an excuse or permission to go out and be a human being and exhale and let it go, because sometimes this profession, or any profession for that matter, but public safety in particular, it can consume you. And I sometimes I'm the biggest hypocrite. I go home at night and I think about what happened here at work, but then I constantly am working to remind myself I gotta let it go, gotta let it go, gotta let it go. And more times than not, I'm successful with that. Sometimes I don't do as well, but I am a work in progress, and I always do my best to do that.
I really appreciate that you said that, because I think if we're going to say that everyone's human, to have the humility to say, like, I'm not perfect either. And like, I really try to do these things and I try to have the awareness, but there's sometimes where, like, I shared this a little bit ago on another podcast, but, I talk about emotional regulation a lot. And what you mentioned earlier, and I think it's such a fine line, because I think self-assessment is so important for growth, to be like, how could I have done things better? But to your point, not to the detriment of yourself, of like ruminating on these things, of like, thinking about it over and over and over again. And so it is a fine line of like self-assessment for growth versus like beating yourself up, over something. And, someone asked me something about like, well, how do you do this? Or, and I was like, man, I'm not perfect. Like you ask anyone around me, and like, I definitely try. It's
that line gets blurry, doesn't it? That line gets blurry. Like we preach, we talk about it, but again, that's what makes us human, is sometimes we step over the line, sometimes we're able to pull ourselves back. It's just knowing what we have to do and putting it in action and doing our best to complete it. And are we always successful? No, but if we're successful more times than not, then I'll take that.
100%. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about something you said earlier. You talked about how you try not to take it home. You try to kind of leave that stress outside of home and to build maybe a stronger home life. You and I talked about this a little bit offline, about the importance of, having that separation and that balance. Do you think that it's possible to always leave it at home? And how do you do that? Like, I know you said that maybe you're not perfect, but what are maybe the steps that you do to be able to come home and just be home?
So the truth is that obviously it depends on the incident, depends on the day, but the fact is that you have to make a conscious effort to do it. And one thing that I've been fortunate, I've been married for 28 years, and my wife and I have an understanding, because some days I'll walk in and say, listen, I had a bad day. I don't want to talk about it right now, but I'll share later. And she respects it. And she knows that if I come in a tiff, same thing with her. She has a bad day. We have an understanding that, she says, I give her some space, and eventually we talk it out. Obviously I leave out, gory details, but we talk generalities so she can understand. Or I'll just walk in and say, I apologize right ahead when I walk in. I had a bad day, give me some space, and she respects that. But that's over 28 years of practice and things. So we sort of had that. Go on. It's just something that when you have to, going back to that conscious effort, you have to say, okay, I'm walking out the door. Let's shut it off a little bit. The drive home, decompress, walk home, find a hobby, do whatever you have to do, and then step back a little bit and just appreciate what you have at your house, appreciate what you have, and just looking at overall blessings as opposed to, okay, that person on that traffic stop really made me angry, but I'm not going to go and take it out on my pets, or I'm not going to go take it out on my neighbors. I'm going to try to transition to, okay, the people around me had nothing to do with that individual that I had a bad contact with. So let's move forward and and start anew. And it is tough. It is tough. No one's going to say it's not. But if you just work at it, it's always working, working, working. Eventually, it does become a little bit of a routine.
Yeah. I like that you said conscious effort because I think effort is I think they're both keywords here, but it does take effort. It takes that awareness, understanding maybe how you typically respond or how that's impacting you or how you are treating other people, and then putting in the effort to make sure that, you are productive and that you are treating people like who are, in your household and the way that they deserve to be treated, because they don't deserve for you to come and offload and take it out on them. Right. To me, it also sounds like there's been practice, 28 years of practice of communication, and being able for you to communicate with your spouse. But I would imagine that your spouse also had to learn, how to communicate with you and how to receive that information, and for you guys to work together as a team. And so it's a joint effort when you come home for you to say, hey, if I say I have a hard day, I need you to give me space, and her to be like, okay, I got it, and then respect that space and have that team effort on the back end. And the other thing you said that I don't know if you even realized it is almost like cognitive reframing, of you being able to say, hey, this was really hard. But I also have really good things in my life, and having that sense of gratitude to like rewire your brain a little bit, because if you are only focusing on negative things, then that's all your brain is going to be trained to focus on. And if you can identify, yes, this was a really tough day, and maybe just say it's a normal day, you just had a tough day. There wasn't any like critical incident that was like above and beyond. It was just maybe every call you were on, every person you talked to was just kind of rude, kind of nasty. Maybe it just was a stressful day in general. For you to say, you know what, that was stressful and these things maybe weren't the best, but I get to go home to my wife who I love, my fur babies that I love, my kids, like I have a great home life. And if you can like switch, it's like a cognitive reframing exercise to switch out of the negative into the positive, then that may be something that has helped you, from what it sounds like, to be able to go home and leave some of that behind.
You can't be, everything's great, because we know it's not that.
Right.
Because things happen at the home, in the personal life, illnesses, things break, stuff like that. But if you look overall and you look at the positive stuff, I am an optimist, and sometimes it's almost to a fault. But just being more realistic. The other thing I that has really helped me is realizing what I can control and can't control.
Yeah.
And that is also a daily fight, because sometimes I'm a prideful individual, and I try very hard to make things right. But eventually, and obviously, there's times I just have to accept I can fix this or I can't fix it, and I have to just accept what I can't fix. And whatever it is, accept it, adjust, and move on. Because if I fixate on the stuff that's out of my control, it really affects what I can control, because sometimes I let that go to the side, and now I start a terrible cycle where I'm trying to catch back up. So yeah. I have learned that really in the last 10, 15 years is that there are things that I can't control and I have to accept it and move on, adjust and move on based on what that event or what those things are.
Yeah. It's so funny because I wouldn't say I'm a pessimist by any means, but I think by nature I'm more of like I would call myself a realist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that I grew up, I was always waiting for the shoe to drop. Like if something felt too good to be true, it probably was. So I never let
You could be a
myself
chief of police because the truth is that this job does make you a realist, right? Because when things are going good, you are sort of always waiting as an administrator. You're waiting for that, phone call, that whatever. But and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just saying there's a lot of correlations with being the boss of a police department and being a realist. Is that okay?
yeah.
Things are going good, but we're only one day away from getting getting that phone call from the mayor say, hey, I need to talk to you about something. But but you go ahead and finish your thought. I just wanted
No, I appreciate that because I think it's to your point, like if you are inherently that way, if you're like, man, like I'm always kind of waiting in the background and I've had a lot of people kind of call me out on that. They're like, why don't you just like let yourself like be proud or excited about certain things? And I'm like, I just think by nature, I'm always just kind of waiting for like the rug to be pulled out a little bit, and so I've had to train my brain, like you've said, to be more optimistic, and it is trainable. If you are maybe more pessimistic or more realistic, more of a realist, you can train yourself to look for those positive things and to be grateful for the things that you can, and you can train your brain in that way. And I really liked that you said control the controllable, because someone told me one time, and this hit me, like, there's like moments in your life where someone says something to you and you're like, dang, they're right. And like, I need to like check myself for a second, but someone looked at me, someone I care about very deeply looked at me and said, I know that you are not happy with the situation right now, but you are acting really poorly. And the one thing that you can control, because you can't control what happened, right? Like that was out of my control. But the one thing you can control is how you respond to that situation.
Yeah.
Every single one of us has the ability to control our actions and our reactions to things. And so that one thing for me, like really kind of hit me hard. And I was like, you're right. Like there are so many things in life that we can't predict, that we can't control. Life, the nature of life is ups and downs, peaks and valleys, right? There's always going to be heartache and there's always going to be triumph and anything in between. And we have the ability to choose how we respond to every situation. And so for me, that was game changing. It put the accountability on me. And really, it's my responsibility to, choose how I want to act.
So what we find a lot of times and is being a police officer, we always want to know why these things happen. Why did that? Why did you choose to rob the bank? Why did you turn to narcotics? Why did you choose that person as your victim? And it's part of our who, what, where, why, and how, right? That's part of the solved crimes. But being a human being, just being part of this world, there are times that we will never, ever, ever know why. Why that person didn't call me, or why did I survive this and my partner did not, or why would an innocent be killed in an accident like a swing break, or the perfect example I give is there a few years back, a gentleman was driving on a roadway, stopped at a red light, and 100-year-old tree fell on his car. Now, if he would have made a right turn or left turn, or got stopped at a previous light, or that light was green, it wouldn't have fallen on him. But we can't ask why. We can say why. We can say the tree was rotted, wind, whatever, but we can't say why was that person? That's something, and that is tough for us to do. So
Yeah.
So just accepting, okay, we'll never know why. We can try, but eventually we just have to. Okay, we won't know why. We need to move on and not dwell on that one question, why this happened, because we may never find out.
Yeah. And to your point, and we talked a little bit about this, it's, the profession we know is getting younger. There's a lot of younger people, entering into this. And how do you prepare them for the realities of this career? How do you prepare them to see those things and, to be able to process these things, especially if maybe they didn't have any adversity in their life or they haven't experienced these things yet? How do you realistically prepare them for those things?
Well, obviously training, people don't like to hear the old man war stories, but war stories do have some, aside from us regaling on how great we were, but war stories do relate. These events happened to us. How would you deal with it? Scenario-based training helps. It sort of not desensitizes them, but it gets them accustomed to the stress of situations. But more importantly, it's just being there, talking to them, leading by example as best you can, recognizing that everybody does things differently, and then just helping them move forward. When we first talk, I talk about adversity and how some of the younger generation had. Recently, we had a tragedy in Northeast Ohio, and through being the chief and other things, I got to see how our young officers acted, and I was very proud. They mourned the fallen officer. They celebrated the fallen officer, but then they came to work every day and represented the fallen officer to the highest degree in the communities that they served, because they recognized that it could have been any one of us, and that officer put their life down on the line and for another human being, or for the greater good, and that's the oath we took. So again, just my observation was as a older officer, as a chief, as somebody who won't be here 5 years down the road. I'll be retired, knowing that this profession is in good hands. It at least showing that they're heading in the right direction was really good for me.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I'm sure that anyone who's listening will appreciate that too, because I do think, and we talked about this a little bit. I've been to plenty of conferences where, every generation before you is always going to judge the next generation, right? Like you always have the older guys that are judging the younger guys coming in. But to place a compliment on the younger generation, saying like, I'm proud of how they responded to this situation. I'm excited about the future of the profession because I think that they're going to do great work. And then also the fact that you guys are laying the foundation right now to support their wellness, so that that as they do rise through the ranks of this career, that they're supported. They do have those things that they're going to need to be able to process the things that they're going to inevitably see throughout their career. And then when they're in leadership positions, the hope is that, they continue to prioritize that for all the generations to come. So I think to me, it sounds like it's a team effort to, support the growth and development of the younger generation, and to, recognize the work that they're doing now.
I would argue that we are products of our predecessors. So I firmly believe that there were as many good police officers back in the day as there are today. And they did their best with everything they did. They came in with a servant's heart. They wanted to help people. And they with what they had to work with, they did their best. The corny thing is, this is like a house, okay? When this department started 70 years ago, the first officers built the foundation, and then each one of us builds a floor. Each generation builds another floor. Some will be a little stronger than the other, but in the end, that building keeps growing and gets stronger and stronger. Why? Because of the culture, because of the leadership, because of the way it's being shown. And that's why if you see an agency or that's having a bad culture, what do? They bring a wrecking ball in, they tear it all out, and they try to rebuild the culture. So, will there be times that each floor maybe not as sturdy as the next? But I can tell you that at least in my agency, or what I've seen in this area, in the Cleveland area, is that all of our agencies had really good people working here. They hired good people. They took leadership roles. They hired good people. They're taking leadership roles. And now my job as the guy who has to steward this is I have to make sure I continue that legacy by hiring good people, retaining them, and doing everything I can to make them the best police officers and best people that I can. So that's the burden of a leader, is making sure that when you take something over, you leave it better than when you found it. And if you do that, at the end, your department will be better.
Yeah, I love that. And you had said something to me, and I'm wondering if that's what you meant by this, that you talked about paying it forward. Mm-hmm. Is that what it looks like to you, to pay it forward?
So the critical incident team, the peer support team, you know what? If I was involved in something, or I was part of something, I would want somebody to come out and help me. Yeah. So if we pay it forward, if we help others, treat people the way we want to be treated, in the end, that creates another ripple in a positive way. So paying it forward is going out and helping another agency, out and helping another officer, help another dispatcher, firefighter, somebody, and helping them. And then what they do is they're able to help somebody else, and it just keeps moving forward. So that's the paying forward thing. Yeah. If we do the right thing, it will come back and help us out in the end.
A lot of today, we're talking about your experiences and maybe some challenges that you've seen and how you've helped to support that. And we talk a lot about mental wellness, growth, development. How important do you think it is for leadership to talk about this stuff, to share their experiences, to maybe share some of the challenges, to maybe normalize wellness, or to create a culture? Do you think that it's important that leaders are also talking about this stuff?
When I was a new police officer, I thought police chiefs were superhuman. They're the chiefs of police. They lead. As I've matured and I've ascended to this position, I really realized that they're just good people trying to do a job. So if you can show them that what you've experienced, and help them not to repeat your mistakes. It's no different than a tactical debrief, right? We talk about, hey, we should have went through a door this way, or maybe we should have searched the person that way, or our response to a call should have been different. This is what we do. We talk about our careers, and when we talk about the mistakes we made, because I have learned far more from my mistakes than I have from my successes. My mistakes have helped my successes happen. So if I could tell a younger officer, hey, I experience this, and just if one little seed or one little nugget, and in a moment of crisis or in a moment of whatever, they remember what the old man told them, then it's a success. And that's not just at my agency, it's anybody that we have contact with. If we do one little thing and help one person, one officer, one dispatcher, one firefighter, and help them cope and become more productive and meet retirement, then it was well worth it. So that's the paying it forward.
Yeah, I love that. And I completely agree with you that, I've learned so much more from my mistakes than anything, honestly. Like I think that it's our biggest opportunity to help other people. And, I think I say this all the time because I believe it. There's no one that's going to go through this life without making mistakes. It's human nature. No one gets out unscathed, and sometimes it's almost like up to us to walk through certain fires to be able to then help others to learn and grow from that. And, at the time, especially when I was younger, I think, you start to, it's hindsight, right? You start to see things differently as you get older and you have some perspective. But at the time when these things were happening, I think that I was always asking the question, like, why me? It kind of goes back to what you said, like the why, like, why did this happen? Why me? Why did I have to go through this really hard thing? And now I think that why has become so much clearer. Now the why is to help other people. Like now the why is to make sure that people around you learn from your mistakes and the things that you've gone through so that they don't have to experience the same thing. They might experience different things. And the hope is that, they're able to learn from the things that happen to you so that they don't have to feel the exact same thing. So I think that it almost becomes an obligation, and before I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like I needed to share like my stuff because I didn't want people to know like the messy things about me. And I wanted people to see me as like put together and perfect and all this stuff. But I really like that you said, like, if we're going to recognize that we're all humans, then there has to be a human element to this. And it's so unrelatable if we stand at the top of a mountain saying that we're perfect, and it isolates people even more. So I really appreciate that sentiment of like, you know what, I'm human. I've gone through some stuff. Things have impacted me. Here are the things I've gone through. Here are the things that helped me. And I want to help you. And then if I help you, then you're going to help someone else. And then it's going to be this snowball effect that's only going to improve over time.
I think that's the mission of a mentor, right? I've had mentors in my life who guided me through stuff. I've learned from my own experiences. So somebody paid it to me. So now all I'm doing is continuing the flow. So if I can mentor some people and show them, what I think is a good way. Again, everybody does it differently. For me, and if they just take a little piece or they take a lot of it, whatever. If it on the backside they're better, then I have repaid the people who helped me get to where I'm at today.
Yeah, and on the same subject, of mentorship and words of wisdom. What words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Well, I first is set realistic goals. When you are trying to accomplish something, make little movements. Don't try to jump from A to Z, go to A to B, follow the process. Secondly is always tell the people who are important to you how you feel about them. Never let anybody guess how you. I think that's also important. That's one thing that I've taken from this is that every day, if people are important to you, tell them. They shouldn't have to guess. And lastly, take time to appreciate, to look at what you have. And you don't have, every day you don't have to do a list of 10 things. But when things are going bad, just look around and just appreciate what you have. Things are never as good as you think it is. Things are never as bad as you think it is. It's somewhere in the middle. But I think if you do the right things and you try your best, in the long run, you are going to have a lot of positives. So when the bad things come, it'll sort of help you. And again, there are bad things that are just, people couldn't even think about. And we appreciate that. And those are the struggles. But if you can help those persons get through it, or if you're going through it and you have someone that you can reach out to and get on the other side, that's important.
Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate your time so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for all that you're doing in the law enforcement and public safety profession and wellness. And thank you for spending some time with me today.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a privilege.
Of course.